Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Cause sagging, right? Or converts the beam to a trough, right? I hope that is clear. Now again, just to reinforce that one, if I say or take a section, say, of this particular chunk of this cantilever beam over here and look at it a little bit more deeply, this is what I have, right? So this is my positive V, positive M, positive V, positive M. Now don't be confused that this is positive V. It is not related to your positive X and positive Y. It is just related to what is the nature of action of this force. It is not along the positive Y or positive X or something like that. It is the nature of action. Positive V is the one which tries to make your beam rotate in a clockwise manner. So if you see over here, both in this section, this V tends to rotate your element clockwise, even in this section tends to rotate your element clockwise, and this V and this V must be equal and opposite because they're looking at the same section over here. Similarly, the positive moment tends to, for this section, tends to turn your beam into a trough. Even in this one tends to turn your beam into a trough or makes a sagging kind of a moment, right? So if I just have to draw an overall positive element, what does that look like? A positive element. So if this is my, say, the element of the beam, right? If I am having to draw the forces, the positive forces on the right hand side over here, right hand side meaning I'm coming from left to right, similar to over here I'm coming from left to the right portion over here. So here my positive shear will be acting like this. My positive moment will be this. So this is my V, this is my M over here. And if I'm looking at the left hand side, I'm going from right to left, here also from right to left here. So here my positive V is acting vertically up and a positive moment is acting like this over here. So this overall is a positive element, right? Let's take a look at the forces again. You see this V and this V, how does it tend to rotate the element? It tends to rotate the element in a clockwise manner. And you see this M and this M over here tries to sort of, tries to sort of curl your beam or, cause a kind of a sagging kind of a movement over here, right? Now, if I have to maybe separate this V and separate this M, and if I have to write that, essentially what I can represent this as, if I just draw the shear. So sorry, let me erase that. So if I just have the shear, I can draw it simply using an element as well. So this V and this V over here will tend to sort of make your element like this. So this is the positive shear. I am again applying the principle of superposition. That's all I'm doing. And for the same thing, how does the moment look like? The moment will be something like this. The sagging phenomena. Right? So I hope it is clear to you that how do we represent a positive shear and a positive moment, because these conventions become important when you are drawing the bending moment diagram and the shear force diagram. Now next, what we are going to look at, we are going to look at some of the types of beams, right? Then we are going to look at some of the necessary tidbits, some things that you should know as a structural engineer, that what are some of the cases where the bending moment and the shear force turns to be zero. We had seen a case where, you remember, when we had that internal hinge and internal pin which does not support any bending but only the loads in the X and the Y direction. And then we are going to look at some problems on drawing the bending moment and shear force diagrams. So before we go ahead and jump into solving some problems on drawing bending moment diagrams and shear force diagrams, it is almost customary for us to learn what are the different types of beams in existence depending upon the support condition. So first we are going to look at the different types of beams, and then we will revisit or have a recap on the conventions, on the sign conventions for the positive shear and the positive moment, and some other fundamentals of the bending moments and the shear forces depending upon the location of the beam or the support condition that you're looking at. So first, let's go ahead and take a look at the different types of support conditions that can happen in a beam, right? So overall, as you know, that beams, depending upon the types of support, you can classify them broadly into determinate beams and indeterminate beams over here. Now, if in between these beams, we will come back to all the different types of beams that you see over here in a minute, but before we go over here, remember that if suppose that there is no load in the positive x direction or the negative x direction, essentially no axial load is there, then in that particular case your summation of fx equals to 0, that equation of equilibrium becomes pretty unusable. You are left with two other equations of equilibrium. One of them is the summation of fy equals to 0, and the other one is the overall moment in the beam must balance out, right? So those essentially dictate to you that whether a beam is statically determinate or indeterminate. For example, here in the first couple of cases, the simply supported case and the case with the overhang that you have, if you have to go and draw the reactions, you will have two unknowns over here, and similarly for the overhang you will have two unknowns. So you have two unknowns, two equations of equilibrium statically determinate, so they are easy to solve. Even for the cantilever beam that you will have a reaction and you will have a moment over here, and reactions are typically drawn with a marked line, right? So you will have these reactions and you have the corresponding two equations of equilibrium, which are easy to solve for these ones. Now, in contrast to the structurally determinate problems, you have the indeterminate ones. The beams that you see at the bottom part of your page over here are the statically indeterminate beams. And why are they statically indeterminate? Is because you have, say for the first one, and this is also probably the place that you start seeing the names which you have not seen before, right? For example, the continuous beam. Why is it called continuous? Because it spans over a support. It is not a simply supported beam. It has one support at the left end, it has one on the middle, and it continues over that support over to the next support over here. So it's a continuous beam. This beam is known as a propped cantilever over here. So for the propped cantilever, in contrast to a cantilever that you see, you have a simply supported roller, or you may have a pin support at the very end over here. Now both of these beams, as you see, are statically indeterminate. And why? Because even in the first one you will have three reactions. If suppose your loads are acting vertically down, you have three reactions but two equations of equilibrium, so it's statically indeterminate to the order 1. And for the propped cantilever as well, as you can see, you will have at the cantilever end, you will have a similar kind of reactions as you had seen earlier. You will have a vertical reaction and a bending moment. But at this roller end that you will have just one reaction. Remember, rollers or pin supports, they cannot take bending moments because it allows for a rotation at that particular end. But here as well, you have three unknowns but two equations of equilibrium. You need one extra equation for solving these kinds of problems. Now, as opposed to the first one, you have a fixed. This is called a fixed beam, or it is also known as a double cantilever, because for a single cantilever, it's just one end is fixed, the other one is free. And for a fixed beam, it's a double cantilever. At both sides, you have a cantilever end. So as you can tell, for this particular type of beam, you will have a vertical reaction and a moment at one end, a vertical reaction and a moment at the other end over here. So you have four unknowns but two equations of equilibrium. And so this is in a sense more indeterminate than the other two cases that we looked at, right? So moving ahead, that a structure, when it is statically indeterminate, it does not mean it's impossible to solve. Now in this particular course of solid mechanics, you will learn a couple of techniques in how to solve the indeterminate beams, but later when you are taking advanced course on structural mechanics, you will come across far more advanced techniques to solve the indeterminate problems. But just keeping things simple over here, you will see that for these structures, right, at least for the first two, they can be made determinate, or if the structural engineer wishes to make them determinate, they can be made determinate very easily. For example, in the continuous beam as well as in the propped cantilever beam that you see, if you go and introduce a hinge, right? If you introduce a hinge, you are imposing an additional condition. That remember that hinge, that discussion which we had in one of our earlier lectures, that the hinge is something which cannot resist a moment. For example, if I have a beam, right, a hinge cannot resist a moment. It can only resist loads about the x of the y axis, but it is free to rotate, and when something is free to happen, the corresponding force does not develop. So if it's free to rotate, that means that it will not have a corresponding bending moment at that particular point. So essentially what you are doing now, that at the point of the hinge that you have over here, if you are drawing the free body diagram of, say, the right part from H to C, right, and if you draw the free body diagram, what you would have at this fourth place, you will have a reaction of Cy, and here maybe you will have Hy, you will have a Hx over here, right, and correspondingly you have an equal and opposite Hx and a Hy if you're drawing from A to H. Now if you take the moments about this particular point, you can easily solve for your Cy. So this is how, you know, so initially you had three unknowns. Initially you had, you know, one, this reaction as unknown. But once you have gone and placed, you know, this particular hinge that is over here, now after you have put that hinge, you have made essentially that your structure is a statically determinate structure now. So based on these Hx and Hy, if you take the moment at this point, you can calculate Cy. Now once you know the reaction Cy, the others can be obtained from the equations of equilibrium. But it's not always the case that if you introduce an internal hinge, you will magically convert a statically indeterminate structure into a determinate one. For example, you see this one over here. Here you started with 4 unknowns. So if you are introducing one hinge over here, it's not going to make your structure determinate. You will still have 3 unknowns but 2 equations of equilibrium. You have to do additional things for these kinds of problems to make them statically determinate, right? So this is all that is there in different types of beam before we start solving the shear force diagram and the bending moment diagram problems. And why it's essential is because, you know, it becomes a part of your vocabulary. If all of a sudden somebody tells you that, okay, I have a propped cantilever with this kind of a load, then you are not, you know, wondering in your mind that what is a propped cantilever. Propped cantilever is simply where you have a cantilever end at one at one particular end, you have a cantilever, you know, fixed support, and in the other end you have a roller or you have a pin. So that's a propped cantilever, right? So next what we are going to do is that we are going to revisit some of the concepts that we covered in the, you know, in the first lecture on this topic, and also some of the fundamentals of drawing the shear force diagrams and the bending moment diagram. Now we are going to do a quick recap of how to find the shear force and the bending moment at any given section of a beam, and then we are going to look at some fundamentals, right? So if we take a beam, for example, let me draw a beam here for you. Let's say we are looking at a, you know, a simply supported example of a beam. Say a pin support at one end and a roller support at the other. And for the sake of discussion, let's say this beam has, you know, a variety of loading. Maybe it has a uniformly distributed load. Maybe it has a point load somewhere over here. Maybe at a particular point it has, you know, an applied bending moment within the beam itself. Now, when we are going to find the value of the shear force and bending moment at any section of this beam, so if I have to go and at my section of interest, maybe at a, you know, distance x from, say, the left end over here, suppose I am trying to find the shear force and the bending moment at this distance x, right? So to find the shear force and the bending moment, as we did in the introductory lecture on this topic, what I can do is that I can only consider the left hand part of the beam. So if I'm considering only the left hand part of the beam, what I will have the pin, I will have the uniformly distributed load, and where I have cut this particular section, here I am going to have a shear force V and a bending moment M. Now remember that this direction of the shear force and the bending moment which I just drew over here is the convention for the positive shear and the positive bending. Why? Because the V tries to rotate your beam in a clockwise manner, and your bending moment M tries to bend your beam into a trough. It causes a sagging kind of a movement that is there, right? So to find this V and M, essentially what we have to do is that we just have to do the equilibrium of this left hand part. If you consider this left hand part over here, here you have a loading, here you have a condition over here which will have a kind of if I just have to do it, will have a reaction, right? Essentially it has a force, and all you are trying to do, you are set to find this V and M, and what you have marked over here is your positive convention for V and a positive convention for M. Now after solving the problem, your V might come out as negative, M might come out as negative, which is fine. It just means that what you have marked, your actual shear force actually is working out in the opposite direction. This is exactly similar to when you have a structure and you have a different types of load, and you don't know that whether the reaction forces are going to point vertically up or down. You simply mark both of them maybe vertically up, and the problem works itself out for you to tell you what is going to be the direction. So what you are marking prior to actually finding the values are the positive conventions. The values may come out as positive, which means what you have drawn is in the right direction. The value may come out as negative, which means what you have drawn, it actually should point in the other direction, right? Now, so this is one of the ways in which you are going from the left to the right. You're cutting this section over here. You can do a similar equilibrium of the right hand part. So as I drew this section over here, I could have segregated the beam into two parts. This is my, say, left part, and this is the right part over here. So the first figure which I drew over here, this is the equilibrium of the left part. Now I can have an equilibrium of the right part as well. So let's just quickly draw the beam on the right part from this all the way to here. So on the right part, I have the load acting, and then I have a moment maybe, right? And remember again the positive convention for shear, if you are taking that right hand part, that you're where you're taking this particular section, is that your V points vertically up and your M points like this, right? Similar nature of action, your shear force V tends to rotate your element in a clockwise manner, and your marked positive convention for the moment M turns your beam into a sagging effect. So it causes the beam to bend into a trough, right? Again, for this particular case, as you can tell, that whether you're finding the M and the V from this the left hand part, or whether you are finding the M and the V from this right hand part, it must come out to be one and the same, because your entire system is in equilibrium, and you've cut a section where the V and the M, whether you're calculating from the left hand side or the right hand side, it should come out as one and the same. What you have to keep in mind is that how you have initially marked. So always when you're solving problems on shear force diagrams and bending moment diagrams, when you're cutting a section, always mark depending upon if you're looking at the left hand side. If you're looking at the left end over here, that means your V comes down, M acts like this. Or you're looking at the right hand side, and if you're balancing, or if you're applying the equations of equilibrium of the forces and the moments on the right hand side, your V points vertically up, M goes like this over here. Essentially V, the positive convention of V is it tries to rotate your beam or your element clockwise, and M tries to make your beam smile. It tries to make your beam act like a trough over here, right? Okay, now in addition to this, so this was mostly the recap part. Now in addition to this, some very basic fundamentals which we have somehow looked at a little bit in our introductory lecture. For example, suppose if you have a beam, so let's draw a simply supported beam again. So if we draw a simply supported beam, right, suppose you have a pin support at the left end and a roller support at the right. Now, regardless of what kind of loading that you have, as long as the loadings are intermediate between the left support and the right support, in a simply supported beam, or when your pin ends and the roller ends are at the very ends of the beam, you will not develop any bending moment. And what is the reason for that? Remember, as long as it's a pin support or a roller support, it allows for some amount of rotation. And when you have rotation, that means the corresponding force, right? In this case, the moment does not develop. So again, another way to think about it is that if you are not allowing a particular deformation or rotation, you will develop a corresponding force or a corresponding moment. So in this particular case, you're allowing the rotation, so the corresponding moment will not develop, right? So for these cases, at this end your bending moment will be 0, at this end also your bending moment will be 0. This is however not true if the pin is somewhere in the middle. So suppose you have a pin, suppose you have an overhanging beam which may be looking something like this. Suppose you have a beam where you have a pin support at the end, and say you have a roller support over here, right? At this support m equals to 0. At this support also the pin cannot take a moment, the m will be equals to 0, but here in the beam, not in the pin, within the beam you will have a finite value of m. When we will solve some problems, you will get to see, right? Now a third fundamental thing to make a note of is that now before moving on to the last thing which I was about to tell you, now remember that if, although because of this applied loading you will not have a moment at this, this pin end or this roller end over here, if the external loading has a moment, then that moment will be developing, right? So you have nowhere to go in that case. For example, here if I come at this pin support and I have an externally applied moment over here, right, then that beam at that particular place will develop a moment. The pin will not, but the beam will. So in those cases you will have the bending moments at the beam. Remember, we draw the shear force diagram and the bending moment diagrams for the beams, not the pins, right? It is along the length of the beam. So if there is no external moment at the pins and or the rollers, and as long as the pins and the rollers are at the extreme ends, you will not have any bending moment, right? Now another thing to note, that suppose you have a cantilever. So if you have a cantilever with a free end, a free end, as the name suggests, is free. That means that if you have the cantilever with some load, maybe a uniformly distributed load or a point load, the free end of the cantilever, it will have 0 shear, it will have 0 moment as well, because it's a free end, it cannot develop anything, right? This is again opposed to the case that if at the free end, suppose instead of having the free end like this, suppose at the free end itself you were going and applying a load over here, then your V in the beam will not be equals to 0. You will see that V becomes equals to that force that is applied. So if you are not applying anything particularly to the free end of a cantilever, your shear force and the bending moments are going to be 0. So these are some of the fun tidbits that you should remember while you are drawing the shear force and the bending moment diagram. All it helps you to do is to catch some errors. So suppose you have drawn the shear force diagram or the bending moment diagram, and you see your beam is simply supported, or it has a pin at the very end. It need not be simply supported. If it has a pin at the ends, at both ends of the beam, you have the pins, and you see after you have found the shear force diagram and the bending moment diagram, suppose the bending moment has a finite value at the end, that should tell you then and there that something is wrong, that you're at the ends. If you have a pin or a roller, you cannot have possibly a bending moment, unless of course an externally applied moment is there, which I showed over in this particular point over here. Similarly for the cantilever, if your cantilever end is free, that is at the end of the cantilever you do not have an applied force, or for that matter if you do not have an applied moment over here, then in this particular case also your m is not equals to 0. But suppose at the end you have no moment and you have no applied force, then in that particular case you will have the case where your V, because it's a free end, it's a completely free end, you're not applying any external forces over here, then you will have the V equals to 0, m equals to 0 over here, right? So these are some of the things to always keep in mind while you are deriving the shear force diagrams and the bending moment diagrams for beams under the different kinds of loadings, right? So now that we are more or less set with the convention, the positive convention, and also some of the tidbits, we will go ahead and look at some of the example problems. And shear force diagrams and bending moment diagram problems are such that you can make, you know, n number of problems for that. You can take a beam, you can put, you know, any different kinds of loadings, and you can try to, you know, solve the shear force diagram and the bending moment diagram. What we'll try to do is that we'll try to look at many different types of problems, and the more number of problems you will do, the more thorough you will be with drawing proper shear force diagrams and bending moment diagrams.